I would dissect Make in India for the World into two parts. First is the ability to make products that are world class, and the second is the ability to make them more competitively than anyone else in the world.
In the last 10 years or 11 years, we have built more roads in India than are in Germany. We have built more houses in India than are in Spain. We have created 75 new airports. So there's been a massive push on creating infrastructure.
If a German company can make in India cheaper than they can make in Germany, they will make in India and export to the rest of the world.
The one thing India doesn't understand is Chinese level scale. They operate at a different level of scale. We have to discover it.
Think big, do less, execute flawlessly.
Hello and welcome to India for the World, a leadership series brought to you by the Mint and BCG. Joining us today are Dr. Anish Shah, Group CEO and MD, Mahindra Group, and Dr. Janmejaya Sinha, Chairman, BCG India. Welcome to this conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm just going to set a context to this chat. Earlier, the connotation for Make in India for the World always seemed aspirational, and it always meant exports. Be it in the 90s when Sundaram Fasteners exported radiator cap to GM or Mahindra made compact disc to the world. People were very happy about exporting from India. I'm sure the context has changed very much because we have a company like Apple and Samsung who have made Make in US or in Korea for the world a great deal of innovation and great business sense too. And also we have in the last at least 10 years a lot of strategic shifts in how companies and countries deal with geopolitics, and therefore making global trade very, very important. You just can't be importing, you have to be exporting too, and therefore governments have also intervened in that. So how does Make in India for the World make sense now than what it was before?
So Sundar, first, thanks for having me here. This is clearly very topical right now, and I would dissect Make in India for the World into two parts. First is the ability to make products that are world class. And the second is the ability to make them more competitively than anyone else in the world. If we can do that, we would then attract various foreign manufacturers to come to India and manufacture in India for the world as well. And let's look at what has changed over the last 10, 20, 30 years. Today, with the R&D investments that have been made by various companies, we are manufacturing products in India that are truly world-class. We'll give Mahindra as a classic example. The vehicles that we have today are ones that stand up to any global manufacturer. In many cases, are better than many global manufacturers. And we are seeing that in markets around the world that we're exporting to. We are seeing the level of demand in India that frankly doesn't allow us to export more right now because we've quadrupled capacity and we still cannot meet the demand that exists out there. And that comes from the R&D investments made, the improvements in quality, the talent levels that we have in India, and the ability to make world-class products. The second is around being competitive. And there are aspects around India being able to generate competitiveness from the talent it has, which is significant. We benchmarked ourselves with many of the global players, and we've come out ahead very significantly in many cases. Not against China as yet, but we're not too far behind there. And that's one, it's a game of scale, where the scale in India today is far lower than it is in China or the EU or the US, of course. And as we get further scale, we are confident we can get a much higher level of competitiveness. Competitiveness is not dependent only on the manufacturer. The government is making a lot of effort to put in the reforms that are required to make industries competitive. Logistics, for example, our direct costs in logistics today are equal to that anywhere in the world, in the developed world. Indirect costs are higher, but there are specific actions being taken to address those as well. Infrastructure, as it comes up, is a huge plus, both physical and digital infrastructure. With all of these things coming together, we are much better placed. It is one that we feel is a critical need for India as well, because it positions India very well on the global stage, and one that will help our economy grow significantly over the next 15 or 20 years.
How would you see that, Dr. Sinha?
See, if we take a historical perspective and you go back to, say, 1995-96, even after the reforms, India had not spent any money on infrastructure. We used to grow at 3.5%. And so we used to use our infrastructure and allow people to deal with it. There wasn't that biting problem of infrastructure. Only around 2000, after about 6-7 years of the reforms, had growth really started to pick up, and the infrastructure constraints started to be becoming palpable. At that time, Vajpayee talked about the golden quadrilateral and stuff, really starting to address the infrastructure. In around 2006-2007, a big bet was taken on building infrastructure with public-private partnerships, which didn't go so well. And due to a variety of clearances, etc., India got into this famously called double balance sheet problem. The clearances weren't given in time, so the banking system started to develop a big NPA balance sheet, and all the infrastructure companies, which in 2007 used to have a debt equity of less than 1, were having debt equities of 4, 5 and 60-70% of the bad loans of the banking system were from infra, power, telecom, the sectors of the future. So one of the things that happened in 2014, which has changed the landscape, is that for 10 years flat, the government said this public-private partnership is not really working. We're just going to build it. So if you really look at in the last 10 years or 11 years, we have built more roads in India than are in Germany. We have built more houses in India than are in Spain. We have created 75 new airports. So there's been a massive push on creating infrastructure. Without this infrastructure, really becoming competitive was not really possible, because the Indian industry had to create everything for their industry. The public goods were not provided. But over the last 10-11 years, a fair degree has been done. Now, these 20 years were important though, because at that stage, the US started offshoring its manufacturing first to China, then to Vietnam. And in the early phase, India was not ready. So it's only past 2018, 19, 20 has India started to attract some of this. And when you attract this, as Anish said, we have to produce at the highest quality competitively. This make in India for the world and all is an outcome. If you are creating quality products competitively, that's it. You don't then have to worry about the other things. They will follow. So now we are getting to a position, there are still constraints, but we are getting to a position where we have created a single market with GST, we have improved creditor rights, and we have really built a massive amount of infrastructure, which is still unfolding. Right? Now, recently we did labor reforms. These are big reforms. They haven't actually got the coverage that they might require. And we have brought 230 million people out of poverty, and which is great because it has created aspiration. This aspiration is now driving companies to produce more, the government to deliver more, because the whole electoral politics is demanding more performance. So the underlying is there. In the 15th August speech, the Prime Minister made some signal announcements. One very big one was on non-financial regulatory reform. Because he said, let's open it up. Let's have big reforms. So if you look at it with GST, with aspiration for a Viksit Bharat in 20, 22 years, it is not so close that it, makes people nervous, but it's close enough that you can aspire. So this structure has started to get created. And with this structure, Indian industry is starting to react. Now, the one thing that I wish Indian industry did a lot more of was R&D. We are not innovating enough. We are innovating. So they have done a great job. Mahindras have done a great job with their car. You can see it. If you sit in it, you will feel you are on Mars, actually. It's really a forward-looking, future-looking car. But, overall, we are underspending in R&D. And now the US administration has created a great opportunity for us. Because what does R&D need? It needs capital and it needs talent. And talent, if you don't allow talent to flow, and a lot of that talent is ours, if we can just attract it and keep it, it really unfolds and gives a big opportunity. But we can pick that up, as we go along.
Sure. So, maybe 10 years back, or in 2007-8, India wanted to sort of globalize and went on to acquire companies. So when you say now make in India, are we talking of Indian companies largely focusing on the local abilities to manufacture, and therefore make in India has a different connotation than what globalization was earlier?
I feel it does, because we have been able to show that we can make world-class products in India. The Indian economy is starting to grow at a very rapid clip now. And given that, a lot more companies will invest in India. And this is not just Indian companies. A lot of foreign companies are looking at coming into India and investing here. And that should be the goal for us. Even at Mahindra, there's often conversation around, do we need protection? Our clear stance is we do not need protection, because we want foreign companies to come and invest in India. We want to create a larger scale in India that will make us competitive as an industry overall, because that scale is essential for us being able to manufacture in India for the world. And therefore, the policies that the government is putting in place is to enable that, is to enable us to attract investments, not just from companies that are based in India, but from companies that are global.
Sure. At BCG, do you see that shift? Because when companies wanted to globalize, that strategy also looked good at that time, because they had a limited Indian market and they wanted to globalize. And today,
Again, I'll go back to history. My first degree was in history. So I keep going back to history, so you must forgive me. India for 30 years has been growing at 6.5%, which is pretty awesome. In this century, India is the second, third, fourth top performer, depending on which years you take, so other than China, India has done very well in these last 25 years. So why are we suddenly talking about India? Because India might have been growing, but it was not significant for the world. We were less than 1.5% of global GDP. There are only 2 countries in human history that have added 5 trillion to their GDP in 10 years. US did it a few times, and then China has done it 2 times in the last 20 years. In this decade, India will add 5 trillion to its GDP. So suddenly, from a $2.3 trillion economy in 2020, we'll end up at 7.2, 7.3 or 6.8. Who the hell cares? It will be a massive growth. So suddenly, from being less than 2% of global GDP, we'll become 6% of global GDP. So in a world like this, everyone has to see you then. Because there is the Indian consumer. It's like a mega trend.
Right.
The Indian consumer, till till 2020 or 2015-20, every company and every country that grew on the back of the American consumer. We are now starting to add consumers. And that is a big deal. Because people are not coming to make India great. They're coming to sell their products, And the Indian consumer is going to become real. Because you've suddenly added $5 trillion in 10 years. This is significant. So that's what I'm saying, that the whole underlying fundamentals are changing. Now, this is a period of great uncertainty in the world, right? Geopolitically, technologically, demographically, in terms of climate. These are big changes. But changes are always creating big opportunities. When there are no changes, the status quo tends to hold. When there is a lot of upheaval,
right,
there is a lot of opportunity. It's not easy opportunity, but there is opportunity.
Right. So would you say that now this Make in India for the world will get embedded into companies, and they would certainly look at it with a strategic intent?
So as Janmay said, it is going to be based on what is beneficial for the company. They're not going to come here to make in India for the world, or Indian companies will look at investments in India and outside based on what's beneficial for them as well. We're starting to see a lot of things align to create a greater need for companies to come here, because that's going to benefit them because of consumers here, because India is more competitive. If a German company can make in India cheaper than they can make in Germany, they will make in India and export to the rest of the world. Similarly, if an Indian company can make in India cheaper than they can make in Thailand or Germany or anywhere else, then we will set up more plants in India to be able to do that. And that is what we're doing right now. So I think that those are the set of things. It again starts with policies and reforms. It starts with making India less expensive, making India easier to do business with. It also depends on companies putting in the investments for R&D. And as all of these things come together now, we're starting to see a much greater pull into India because that's beneficial for each of the parties involved.
Right. I'm going to direct this question to you and then ask the same question to you. How do boards and CXOs usually look at opportunities like Make in India for the world, especially when a domestic market is growing very hard and nice?
So it depends on which CXOs and boards you talk about. If you look at foreign companies, I will do a caricature. There are 5 types of foreign boards, those who don't know India. And they are honest. They just don't know India. That's good. Then there are those who have been disappointed by India. Then there are those who make money in India. They wash their face, but it's not significant. They may have less than 2% of their global sales here. Then there are those who have been very successful in India, the Suzukis, the Samsungs, etc. And then there are those who have said, we will make it work. Because it's really important, we have a problem. Like an Apple, it said that, we have to de-risk ourselves. And now they're going to be doing something like 40% of their Apple sales in the US of iPhones are being produced in India. I mean, just imagine in 7 years, 8 years, something like that. So these are the 5 different stereotypes. Those who don't know India, they're fine. And I always add that they better not deal with an Indian who's in their company who went 25 years ago. They are the most dangerous. Yeah. They know nothing about India. They just have a brown color. Right. It's very dangerous. Right. But, the others who are actually open to learn, they are interesting. And then there are those who have been disappointed. Any history in a company makes it difficult for them to overcome their biases. And those that have treated this as a retirement perch also then find it hard to change gears. Now, the Indian situation is very different. I mean, Indian companies are now starting to figure out and discover their own aspiration. And aspirational India is not just the Indian consumer, it's the Indian industry. And I mean, you look at Anish, what he's doing at Mahindra, you look at, Velayan, what he's doing. And so you can see these people starting to take advantage of their opportunities. So, I mean, I just divide this into whom we are talking about.
I would add that the boards and CXOs are looking at India in a very different way now because they see the opportunity here. And some of the discussions that we have is that if we are not bold enough, we will be left behind. But it's not sufficient to just make in India for India. Yes, the opportunity is very high in India. But to be successful in doing that, we have to be successful globally. Because despite the uncertainties, despite the fact that we see walls coming up, there are walls coming down as well. There are a number of free trade agreements coming in. And if we are not competitive globally, global companies will come into India and eat our lunch. So that's where we've got to be able to deliver the best products and services for our customers in India and be able to take them to the world, be able to convince ourselves that we can win in different markets around the world, and which is the reason why we come back to the Indian consumer and say that we are the best in the world.
So how would you tell your manager, you said that your vehicles are good enough to be exported to very good markets too, right? And he says that, look, I want to export my car to another market, but you tell him that, look, the Indian market is already needs our car more than the global markets. And how do you sort of temper this? Because this is a great opportunity for you to actually go out there because the times are good. You have the money. You don't have to put too much money into your product. Your product is already there. So how do you actually create for the world when the Indian market is already taking all your resources?
This is the challenge. It's a good challenge to have. And the problem of plenty is sometimes a tougher one. But that's part of what we've got to be able to do. As I mentioned earlier, we've quadrupled capacity in the auto business, and we're still looking at adding more capacity because we see the opportunity to be able to be successful in many markets. The question though is how, because each market requires a set of efforts. It's not just the product. And the approach we are taking is consistent with our philosophy, which we talk about with our folks. Think big, do less, execute flawlessly. So we're picking 3 markets right now, targeting 15 to 20% market share in those 3 markets. That's phase 1. Then we move to phase 2 and then phase 3 after that. So it has to be done in a measured manner because we've got to be able to go in and understand the market, design products for that market, be able to convince customers that yes, these are the products that would work well for you, and then be able to go and do more. So we've started that journey already, and it's one that will take some time, but to do it well, you need that time.
So, I always, if you were a foreign company, I would have told you that there are 3 Indias. There is a Europe, there is an Indonesia, and there is a Sub-Saharan Africa. There are about 70 million Europeans, there are about 500 million Indonesians, and there are about 1 billion Sub-Saharan Africans. Now, they have different demand profiles. The good news is that the pyramid is becoming diamond-shaped. So the Sub-Saharan Africa is shrinking as Indonesia and Europe starts to grow. So the demand is morphing. And in different segments, Indian companies compete in different places. So the Sub-Saharan demand is very local. But the European demand goes across. If you can sell to a European in India, you can sell to a European abroad. Likewise, an Indian who buys a Mercedes, is choosing between alternate car choices, right? And so we have to, these big labels, one has to always unpeel because there is a lot hidden inside those, right? And companies have to be razor sharp in figuring out who are they wanting to serve and how are they ensuring that their products are of the highest quality and most competitively produced.
Right. So will that sort of drive Make in India for the world a lot more?
Sometimes it's dangerous to challenge labels, but labels are very confining. Make in India for the world. I just want India to make at scale competitively. And I don't care whether it's for the world or for India. If you're making at scale and you're making competitively and you're making quality products, let it take care of itself. Just now, to be honest with you, the one thing India doesn't understand is Chinese level scale. They operate at a different level of scale, and we have to discover it. So, but, make in India for the world basically is a clarion call for what Anish said at the start. Make top quality products competitively. The world will take care of itself.
You would expect that years of investing in infrastructure eventually leads to a lot of efficiency and ideas and growth, right? At some point of time, the Chinese innovation, sort of started kicking up in a hockey stick sort of growth. And way back in 2005-06, I used to see covers of international magazines talking of Chinese design. Do you think that we are at a stage where, like your design of your vehicle, we are at that stage where the infrastructure is going to contribute to Indian products, which are much, much better, and the feel and look and feel of it is internationally competitive?
Look, we have to be thoughtful about what we mean. Power supply in India is nowhere where it needs to be. Logistic costs are coming down. Land is difficult. While it has become easier to do business in India, it is not easy. We are working towards making it easier, okay? So there are constraints, and we have got a colonial mindset in some parts of our bureaucracy and government. We have to shed it, as we want to become more competitive. Now you can see in every statement of the Prime Minister, him urging us to do that. You pick up statements of his. Truly, he's pushing all the time, And I just feel that we are a site in construction. We are a work in progress. Everything is happening. So a lot of good things are happening, but we haven't reached the peak yet. We are far from it. And thank God for that, because it gives us energy, to keep doing more.
Sure. I do feel we're very well poised, because while infrastructure is growing, both physical and digital, the focus on reforms and the focus on ease of doing business is very high from the government. I would agree with Janmejaya in terms of the Prime Minister's statement, but even beyond the Prime Minister, various leaders in government are very focused on how do we make things easier. A number of regulators are focused on that as well. And that is something that will position India really well. And then you add to that demographics. India's, among all the major economies, the lowest median age. And at 28 years median versus 38 for China and the US, 48 or 49 for Japan, India is just extremely well positioned. We're going to continue adding to the labor force for the next 30 years. And that sets up India really well in terms of where it is today, in terms of the efforts that are going in to develop that scale, and the factors that will help drive that and make that happen.
In fact, what Anish has just said is mostly overlooked. China began this century with 1.2 billion people. It will end this century with somewhere between 630 and 650 million people. Wow. So it will lose 600 million people. And it will be an older age group, that's 600 million. Robots, etc., that's fine. But it will be a very different society, And we in 2100 will still be, fine. It will be Europe and China and Japan and South Korea, which will really be facing a problem. In fact, the world today has 8 billion people. We will stabilize by 2070 at 10 billion people. The next 2 billion people will come from 12 countries, South Asia and Africa. It's not really well appreciated enough. In 2100, Nigeria will have about 580, 600 million people. The numbers are staggering. And also come with their challenges actually.
So how will this demographic dividend actually manifest? Um,
Any dividend, you see, an opportunity is an opportunity. Till you take advantage of it, it is nothing. By in and of itself, opportunities have to be taken advantage of to be converted into reality. So the fact that we have young people is great. The fact that I always joke, I'm a Bihari, I always joke that India is run by Biharis. Whether you go to Punjab, the agricultural laborer is Bihar. If you go to Tamil Nadu, the auto laborer is from Bihar. If you go out in Mumbai and go to any of the buildings and look at the security staff, they are from Bihar. Taxi drivers are from Bihar. This is the fact that our labor force can move. So the young people are in Bihar, in Eastern UP, in West Bengal, in Chhattisgarh, in Jharkhand, in Orissa. The replacement age rate has already, we have gone below the replacement rate in South India, in 6 countries of South India. So the fact that India has a free labor market allows us to do things which we would not, the rest of the world needs immigration for. But, this is that is the dividend part. The fact that all the Biharis are not educated as well as they should be is the disaster part. That's the how you wait.
Sure. So let me get into some nitty-gritty about this whole Make in India. How did this whole rare earth magnet fiasco play out in the minds of companies? Did they realize that they had missed a very crucial part of planning strategy? What was it like? And therefore, what will be the reaction to this in terms of long-term supply chain planning? Yeah.
So rare earths have various aspects to it. You've got the light rare earths and the heavy rare earths.
Right.
Refining heavy rare earths is radioactive, and that therefore was curtailed in various countries around the world. Even the US till 2017 did not do anything with heavy rare earths. They started at that point, but the refining was still done in China. And as the geopolitical issues play out, what we've seen is companies starting to use some of these as weapons in geopolitics. The policies that are being laid out for the government now will start creating self-sufficiency around rare earths in India as well. We do have some deposits. We do have some ability to refine them here as well. That is being enhanced now. And it will take about 3 to 4 years. But the challenge when it came up, companies like us and many others could find alternate solutions to it. There are also a number of folks that are working towards using less rare earths in permanent magnets, which is where the real issue was, because there are other ferrite magnets that can be used in certain situations, not many right now, because you don't have the efficiency in ferrite magnets that you have with rare earths. But in some cases, that works as well. So there are multiple solutions that have been looked at. And that helped us get over the recent crisis. But in the longer term, we have to develop that self-sufficiency, and there is a clear path to be able to doing that.
Yeah. So how would sort of boards react to this sort of impetus of not having a very crucial raw material?
So, what has happened is the Ricardian world, when David Ricardo said everyone will produce to their competitive advantage, has had a very big setback. So now everyone is also wanting resilience and risk aversion, towards their supply chains. So supply chains got created, these global supply chains got created in the last 20 years. And now everyone is saying that the level of integration was such that during COVID, you didn't have ventilators in the US, you didn't have masks in the US. So people said we are not going to become dependent like this again. So it is not that there will not be global trade. Global trade, in fact, is growing every year, But the nature of global trade will adjust to ensure that you have enough resilience. And so supply chains are now adapting to a certain degree of, what the Prime Minister has called Atmanirbharta, plus the fact that we will, of course, stay in the market. Now, in the last 25 years, China went from 6% of global manufacturing to 33% of global manufacturing, and it's continuing to target to keep that share. People worry about that. And they are right to worry. If I was a country, I would worry. Why should 1/3 of the world's manufacturing be in one country? So, double their population share, right? So there are some of these challenges which are there. And the greatest advantage that we have, that look, just now there are 4 lakh H1Bs in the US. 290,000 of them are Indians. Now the fact that 70% of the people who were given these visas were from India, they must have had something to get it, right?
Right.
If they were losers, why would you give them an H1B? Think of who the H1Bs have been. Elon Musk, Satya Nadella, Sundar Pichai, Arvind Krishna. Meaning, they are not all, they are real people. So, that group will start circulating. And hopefully some of them will be back here, and we have to be able to be welcoming enough to start every part of this engine. Make in India needs capital, talent, and infrastructure.
Right.
So now we should start attracting the talent, and then we should start attracting the capital. Now, I'll just tell you something about capital. Currently, the US has $62 trillion of foreign liabilities. It has $35 trillion of foreign assets. It earns more on its foreign assets than it pays out on its liabilities. So essentially it has 27 trillion. 27 trillion is 6 Indias. It is the size of US GDP of free capital, risk capital. If we could get, when $10 billion, $15 billion of FPI money flows out of India, यहाँ पर in Bihar we would say हाय तोबा मच जाता, if we should target 100 billion of that.
Right.
If you get 100 billion of this $27 trillion, imagine what that would do. If we can get some of that talent, we can get some of that capital, if you're building our infrastructure, then we will accelerate at a level we will surprise ourselves with.
So I have one final question. When you do something, the value addition is important, right? In the software industry or in the drug industry, Indians did all the work, but the value addition was not as good as the work that they did. Eventually, it is the brand, the product, and what you bring to the table, the IP that you bring to the table. Can India eventually get the value for what it makes? And how do they get there?
With what is happening now, we're starting to see research and development in India play a big role in enhancing value addition for Indian companies. In addition to that, it's also being able to take the talent that we have in India to be able to create that value. So with manufacturing in India, the value addition is going to stay here. Going back to your previous point, just in time has moved now to just in case. And in some ways, Indians are very good at just in case. You heard about jugaad as the old term.
Right.
Jugaad has to now fit into a process to make it simpler. By process, we don't mean bureaucracy, but efficiency. And with that, in the world that's evolving right now, I think India has a much bigger role to play and much better positioned.
What do you think about it, Dr. Singh?
The ingredients are all present. But we have also had some easy things. We have not been forced to innovate in the same way. If you look at the .com created an industry. I actually am very negative on that industry. The ITES industry has stayed a service industry, didn't start producing products. I think because it was a bit lazy. So there I disagree with Anish a bit. I feel that ITES has missed an opportunity. And so I disagree with you also. They have been given the price of what they produced. and the IP has earned the real price.
Right.
And we didn't create the IP to earn the real price. We decided to subjugate ourselves for the easy money that it was providing, to do factor cost arbitrage rather than IP creation. When the same people were doing that in the US, meaning it was not that Indians were the US products were being produced, at least 30% of those guys producing it were of Indian origin. But our companies didn't do enough there. And I feel that has been a missed opportunity, and we really need to go in there. We have not created the technology products that we should have, that we are capable of, and that we need to start doing rapidly. So there I have disappointment.
So with that critical note, we will draw the curtains on a great conversation. Thank you, Anish, and thank you, Dr. Sinha, for joining us today. And thank you for the audience for tuning in. This is India for the World, a leadership series brought to you by the Mint and BCG. And I'm T. Surinder signing off.